Walk us through an ideal CV format.
Well, I wouldn't say there is an ideal CV format, to be honest. I would say it really depends on the industry that you are applying to. So, for example, if you're applying to a startup, to social media, or anything in the creative side, your CV can look and feel a bit more creative. By that, what I mean is you can have icons, you can have some color to your CV. But if you are then applying to a more traditional form of industry, so if you're applying to the banking industry, for example, the legal industry, engineering, you would go with a more traditional look and feel of your CV. So there isn't really an ideal CV format per se, but you would have some kind of concept in terms of what CV style would fit the kind of industry that you're applying to.
And are there any sections that you must have in a CV?
Yeah, actually, as a matter of fact, there's some sections that you have to have in a CV, and these include obviously your personal details, your work experience, your education, any extracurricular activities that you are part of, awards, competitions, and case studies. Now, I want to highlight though, when you talk about personal details, there's certain things that you absolutely do not put in your CV, right? So by that, what I mean is you wouldn't put your address, you will not put your picture, you will not put your date of birth, you will not put your gender. Now, why we say you do not do these things is because it can create and allow, firstly, it allows for unconscious bias. Secondly, if you lose your CV, you've actually given out all your information. Yeah. Another thing that you never put on your CV is your ID card number. The only personal details you ever put in your CV is your name, your contact number, your email address, and if anything, your LinkedIn profile. That's it.
You've seen a lot of CVs, but is there any preferred set of fonts or line spacing or any type of font that's preferred?
So again, creatives would be very different from traditional. So I'll start with the traditional first. With traditional, again, you'll go with more traditional fonts. You'll go with something like Times New Roman. You go with Calibri. You'll go with Arial. You'll stick to font size anywhere between 10 and 12, so it's not too small nor is it too big. When you're again applying for anything in the arts or creative side, you can be creative with the kind of fonts that you use. Now you can even figure out some of the fonts that they use on their website, because if you are applying to like a social media company, if you are applying to something in the arts, they would be very creative with their websites as well. So you can have a look at that and play around with your CV, your fonts, your font colors, your font size, based on that.
Do all companies expect a one-page CV?
No. Now, the reason we say try and stick it to one page is because what a lot of grads do is they have a lot of space, wasted space on their CV, to show that they've done a lot. But sometimes the content on that CV is really irrelevant, right? If you have very relevant stuff to show in your CV and it overruns, that is fine, right? But it has to be in relevance to the job that you're applying for, which is why we always say when you are applying for any kind of jobs, you need to tweak your CV to match the application that you're making. Don't just put everything in. You pick and you choose what you put in your CV. You may have a lot of credentials, you may have a lot of exposure to extracurricular activities, but if it doesn't add value to what role you're applying, it's wasted space. So that's why we say stick it to one page so that it's more crisp and it's to the point. You need to also be mindful that when you are applying for grad roles especially, recruiters are receiving applications in thousands, right? So they do not have time to sit and scan through. So the minute they see, okay, there's a lot of space, wasted space, they go through the first half of the page and the content is irrelevant, you almost immediately go into a no pile. So to avoid all of that, we say try and stick it to one page because then you are forced to keep your CV more crisp. So some of the common mistakes I think stem from the lack of attention to details. So we've seen a lot of students make grammatical errors, spelling mistakes, which again should not exist. Okay, that's the first thing, should not exist, because it says a lot about you as an individual in terms of your attention to details. But even beyond that, what we've seen is students tend to send out a generic CV. So they make one CV and they think the CV will fit everything, but that's not the case. Because if you are applying, say, for a role in HR, the skills that's required for HR, the skills and the requirements that's laid out in the job description is very different from supposing you're applying for a role in operations, right? So you cannot just send a generic CV, because you need to also understand, as I mentioned earlier, as graduates, your recruiter is receiving applications in the thousands. Now, before your CV, if we talk about the bigger firms, right? Before your CV even reaches the hands of a recruiter, it goes through this ATS system that skims through your CV before it reaches the inbox of the recruiter. So what it skims through is for keywords. So if you don't have certain keywords in your CV that matches the job description, you almost risk falling into this black hole. Now, we will never know exactly what those keywords are, which is why we always advise students to read the job description, read the requirements, and try and match the skills that you have acquired and the experience that you have matches the language that's on the job description. Now, I'm not saying to fabricate, I'm not saying to exaggerate, but if you do have some level of experience, it's only then that you should be applying to the job. So just use and match your language to the job description.